it is exceedingly frustrating that agencies presumably nominally run by the President of the United States continue to withhold information, and I'm convinced they withhold information because it can be seen to be helpful to him as opposed to hurting him. That's the way that's what's been happening. It's been relatively consistent. Dr. Fauci, according to the government, is the reason it's slowed down is because he has to review all these emails, which is nonsensical. Another big issue, obviously, and it's come up in the debates repeatedly between President Trump and the former Vice President Biden about China and coronavirus. And our friends at the Daily Caller News Foundation asked the NIH specifically for documents about WHO, China, and coronavirus. And the documents were Dr. Fauci's emails and the emails of his top deputy. So needless to say, they got to Stonewall. And so Judicial Watch came to the rescue to file a lawsuit on behalf of the Daily Caller News Foundation. And the response was Stonewall delay. In fact, they found documents, they did the initial search, but they didn't want to turn over any of them till after the election. And a federal court judge says, no, you got to at least begin giving us the first batch before the election, which was October 21st. So we finally got the documents last night or yesterday, and they show the following. They show that a WHO entity, let me call it up here, was oddly focused on pushing out a friendly press release for China. This is, again, during the beginning of the pandemic. And the entity is the Global Preparedness Monitoring Board, which is an entity convened by the World Health Organization and World Bank. And they wrote an email on January 27th, 2020, and this was before they knew the full scope of the virus and all of that. It was called a time-sensitive message from the GPMB, this WHO body, co-chairs, review of a draft GPMB statement on the 2019 novel coronavirus. There was a consensus for the GPMB to issue a statement supportive of countries, especially China, they write in parentheses, and WHO response efforts, and to call for urgent action to further strengthen global preparedness and response to this outbreak. Please find attached a draft statement. On January 29th, Fauci responds, looks fine, please see my comments and attached document. Of course, they didn't provide the draft comments, which is typical, inappropriate, but typical. And so you've got this WHO entity pushing for this statement to be released about COVID with a focus on praising China. And of course, it was done because I went and looked online to see, well, okay, what statement was actually issued. And this is what the statement says. The Global Preparedness Monitoring Board, GPMB, as I said, convened on January 27, 2020 to discuss the current outbreak of the 2019 nCoV, which is the novel coronavirus, COVID, which was first detected in Wuhan, China, and is now quickly spreading internationally. The board commends the speed of the response so far by countries and the World Health Organization, the transparency of China in sharing information and the genome sequence of the virus, and the strong collaboration between China and affected countries and with WHO. So I don't need to tell you about the controversy in the way China handled this in terms of targeting those who were blowing the whistle internally on it, delaying disclosure to key entities about what was going on in China, and other problems. And isn't it interesting that WHO's and this front for WHO, because I keep on calling it the GMPB, it's really WHO. Their collective concern is it's clear in the email about praising China's role here. It helps explain why they didn't want to turn over this document, doesn't it? And I think it's real interesting. There are other emails here that kind of show you the back and forth, and they're interesting to read. But this is the big stuff. And I don't know what else is out there, but I tell you, it is exceedingly frustrating that agencies presumably nominally run by the President of the United States continue to withhold information. And I'm convinced they withhold information because it can be seen to be helpful to him as opposed to hurting him. That's the way that's what's been happening. It's been relatively consistent. Dr. Fauci, according to the government, is the reason it's slowed down is because he has to review all these emails, which is nonsensical. As I wrote in our statement, these Fauci emails show how praising China was the odd priority of the WHO in the face of a novel and dangerous coronavirus, that the NIH tried to slow roll the release of these emails and is still sitting on thousands more as a scandal. So they've only reviewed 300 pages. There are 4,200 pages that they've found, and they're going to release them monthly. So now what's 3 into 42? 12 is 36, 14 months. So we won't be able to see these documents until 2022 in their entirety. I jokingly say we'll be in a Chelsea Clinton administration before we see all the documents the deep state is hiding from us. And as our friends over at the Daily Caller News Foundation, the now government says, Neil Patel, the government is now ever so slowly complying with the law and letting the American people know how they did business with WHO and China at the outset of this pandemic. We are grateful to Judicial Watch for helping us force the government to do its job, which is to follow the law. Oh boy. And what I found interesting about these emails, now admittedly, it's only a small portion of the documents, but they don't show, at least in this batch, that they saw this as a dramatic virus initially. You can go and look at the documents, and I encourage you to review them themselves. There's no indication that this was like a high red alert issue. I mean, they were moving people to try to study it. That's clear. But it's pretty clear early on, they didn't see it as the contagion that we've since come to learn it was or threatened to be. They didn't kind of know about it, probably because the Chinese weren't telling them about it. And it looked like they were deferential to the Chinese here in the emails. Why praise them when you really didn't know what was going on? I mean, in my view, if you're dealing with the Chinese Communist government, you should be skeptical of them and just presume they're lying about everything. I mean, my view is you should be skeptical when the government tells you pretty much anything, even in a democratic or constitutional republic. Why would we believe anything in the Chinese that the communist government in China would be telling us on something obviously they would have a significant political interest in minimizing? But that's the way things worked, and that's what Dr. Fauci approved according to these new emails. So we'll see what else is happening, and we'll talk about it later. I'll give you updates as we get more documents as they come in. But again, the president should just order the release of every document they have. Do it now. Do it now. The government can release it. When they say it takes months and months and years, it's just excuses. That's not reasons. It's the government. They can do whatever they want. So it's frustrating.
Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to catch all the latest news from Judicial Watch.